right, that was Khalid Talk. I work very hard to control the environment I work in comedically. I only work where I want to work and who I want to work for. I want to work with. I don't work because that is a very precious place to me. I've been offered a gig, a couple of gigs, 3 or 4 gigs to work with Monique in LA, in Brooklyn, in Houston, and I turned them down because I didn't think it would work. So after talking to a lot of people, and one of the very people in this room about how things are different, 2 of the very people in this room, as a matter of fact, and how things are different, and look at, how things are coming around, I decided it would be wrong for me not to give somebody a chance based on things that they'd never done to me. That would have been wrong to me. And when she talks, she goes on her diatribe and she talks about me having my feet under her table. That was at her invitation. I was doing a gig in Greenbelt, Maryland. She lived in Baltimore. She was having a fight party. It was, I think, Evander Holyfield and Mike Tyson. And sure enough, I came to her table at her invitation. And it was a wonderful time. As a matter of fact, it was based on that interaction, along with talking to people, I decided that I would do these gigs. I decided I would do it. And now I know what Tyler Perry knows. I know what Lee Daniels knows. I know what Oprah knows. I know what Steve Harvey knows. I know what Charlamagne the God knows. I know what Netflix knows. Saying yes to Monique is an occupational hazard. Now, we're playing a gig in Detroit this weekend. I know I'm going on at 9:45. I leave the hotel. I get there around 9. Monique had just gotten there. She's supposed to be there at 8:40. She had just gotten there, gone at 8:40. She got there at 8:38. What Monique was trying to do was to slow walk the show. She didn't end up getting on for 30 minutes. The oldest trick in the world is, if I want to change the order and I don't have merit, I'll try to make people wait so long that everybody gets nervous and go, please, just go on so we can avoid a conflict. That didn't happen. Monique got on stage. Monique actually felt like she had merit. She would have done 1 of 3 things. Either she would have took it up with the promoter, and she did, and the promoter said, we're going on, and whether you're going or not, that's a different thing. You would have not done it, but she knew she had to get on stage, or she would have been in breach of contract, or she would have come to talk to me. She didn't ever, and I emphatically emphasize this, she never once talked to me. I haven't seen Monique in years. I didn't see her at the venue before, after, or during. I haven't spoken or seen Monique. So if you really thought that you had a legitimate contract dispute, you would have come to me and said, hey, I have this contract and you had this contract. Notice not one thing on that contract, not one person she has on that contract, not one thing happened. Do you know why? Because it wasn't legitimate. And she goes on stage and she proceeds to eviscerate me. Not just me, but Steve Harvey, the sexual, my wife, my dog later on in subsequent conversation. Let me ask you something. What did any of that have to do with an alleged contract dispute? What did Steve Harvey have to do with your contract? What did I have to do with your contract? What did my dog have to do with your contract? What does my wife have to do with your contract? You wrote your contract, you and your daddy. You proceeded to say things that were so patently insulting that it was galling. It was galling. You asked in subsequent conversations why I have a dog, a support dog, what kind of person has a support dog. I have that dog because my father died. My children and family decided they would get a dog from where he was from, and I named the dog after my father. I don't have a dog to keep people away from me. I have a dog so I have my father with me all the time. That is an act of love which you know very little about. You proceeded to assault my sexuality. You have the temerity to assault someone's sexuality, a man's sexuality, given who you lay next to? None of that had anything to do with alleged contract dispute. You could have taken that up with a lawyer. You would have gotten out. You could have not gone on stage, but you knew you didn't have a valid contract. And you do what you always have done. You tried to weaponize black femininity. You tried to turn that audience against me. You tried to burn everything down. Like you do all the time. Who calls Netflix and thinks I can get $10 million because I did the Queens of Comedy? Who thinks you can get on stage and still live off that? I was a king of comedy. You never hear me talking about it because in this business, like any other, it isn't what you have done, it's what you do. That show was one I signed on to do. I made the quintessential mistake, the horrible mistake that like Tyler Perry, like Lee Daniels, like Oprah, like all these people of saying yes to you. And it is an occupational hazard. It is my fault. I have learned my lesson. You didn't just, and the thing that bothers me the most, isn't the things that you said, because I know who I am and I know what I do. And I have a pristine reputation. And everybody who knows me know what I'm about. It's this whole, my dear, my babies, I love you for real, which is so transparently false, it is ridiculous. But the thing that was really the most annoying, the thing that was really the most bothersome, is after a terrible couple of weeks where people were being slain in Buffalo, where people were being slain, kids are getting slain in school, and people had come to a comedy show to get away from all of their problems, you besieged them with yours. The one contract that isn't in dispute is the one that the audience had with us to entertain them. But every single time, more and more, you spend half of your time talking about your grievances and what you didn't get and who did this to you. Listen, when you burn things up and you sit back to watch the results of them, she's literally set that stage on fire, said the most incendiary things ever, and I had to go on stage. And she has the temerity to call me a coward. A coward would have left. A coward would have said, I can't go. You didn't even want to go on when you had a contract that you knew that not to be true. You made up this whole narrative that you knew not to be true, and you played that out in front of the audience. And then I had to go on behind you. And you know what you did? You sat back and you tried to watch your damage. You set the stage on fire and you watched what you've done. You know who does that? Arsonists do that. Arsonists set shit on fire and try to see the damage it drives. But I blame myself, because I know now what I didn't before. Saying yes to you is an occupational hazard, one I will not repeat. I don't blame you. I wish you well. But when you do the things you do, when everything's about you, when you're vitriolic, when you have all these fights with all of these entities, it is you. Precious was not a movie. Precious was an autobiography. That is who you are, literally. You mad at the contract you and daddy wrote, your daddy? And I don't know why you call a man daddy and you pay for him. That's a son. Let's be clear. I am not angry with you. I'm angry with me. I did what I knew not to be true. But I'm going to tell you something. When you burn and you destroy and you wreck, you are not a queen of comedy. You're a queen of ashes. Now, while I'm going to go back to work, and you get back to your kingdom of smoke. That's a little note from the GED section. We got the jazz report coming up in 15 minutes. It's the D.L. Hughley Show.